when it comes to cutting trees, anything, I don't care if it's firewood, cutting trees on your own property, clearing, logging, everything out here wants to kill you.
In my mind, a tree that has a lot of lean or is already trying to go hard one way, your job is not to make it fall. Your job is to keep it from falling until you're ready. So I didn't know it when I invited Matt here, but apparently I'm working with royalty today.
That's right.
This is the Missouri State Logger of the Year.
2023, baby.
Hey, it's Brock here with Rock Hill Farm.
And I'm Matt from Boys in the Woods. Yeah, boy.
Yeah. And today we're going to teach you guys how to cut down trees. So I am just a homeowner, but I cut quite a few trees on my property. I take it seriously, and I've tried to study it and learn everything I can about the right way and the wrong way to cut down a tree. Today, for this video, I've brought in someone who does it for a living every day.
Yeah.
And we were doing a little math in our heads earlier that all the trees I've cut in my life is probably what he cut last week. We're going to start off with a fairly straightforward tree, and we're going to progress into some more dangerous trees. We're going to talk about what you need to look for before making a cut, and just kind of walk through all the frequently asked questions of things we hear in videos.
Yeah, there's a lot, and there's a lot of things that you need to know and you need to look for, and hopefully we can help you out.
Yeah, so Matt has like almost 500,000 followers on his Facebook videos, and so we've read every kind of comment, and some of these comments, a lot of these comments are, telling us we don't know what we're talking about, but some of them, people are saying things that are so wrong and so dangerous, I feel like it needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
So what we've got right here is a huge tree. This is probably 40-inch diameter at least.
Definitely down there at the butt.
Yeah, down at the ground level where a logger would be cutting it, that's closer to 5 feet. Up here, it's a good solid 3 feet. So I'm gonna let Matt be the expert here and tell us, when you walk up to a big tree like this, what you're looking at on this tree is the hazards and how you decide the way you're going to cut it.
So what I like to look for is the lean of the tree. So this tree, naturally, it leans out here in the pasture, so that works really good for what we're doing today. But you got to watch, this tree's dead, so you got to watch all the dead limbs, and then how you cut it, you want to be sure that you have a clear path out of here the second it starts to go, because any of these could shake out on you, and that makes for a bad day.
Next thing I think of that we're going to get comments on is the hazard of all this being a trip hazard. So you want to clean the area around the tree.
Yeah. I'll do some weed eating with my chainsaw. You'll see that in the video.
So then the next thing is with the tree, you've decided where it wants to go.
And then we decide where we want to put it. And then that's how we decide where to put our face cut. And we'll use an open face, and we'll create a hinge at the back of the open face. We'll bore everything out. So the tree will never even know that it's being cut until we let it go with the trigger. And the second that trigger pops, I'll be out of the way.
So we're throwing around some terminology that a lot of you probably know, but maybe some of you don't. So as we do each tree felling, we're going to stop and we're going to talk about what we mean by hinge, face cut, bore cut, trigger, any terminology you hear, we're going to try to demonstrate that. So the next thing I think about when I look at a tree is, how solid is this tree? Because there's a big difference between a solid tree and a hollow tree. Yes. For how you handle it.
And there's little telltale signs here. This tree, overall, it looks solid. You can see where the woodpecker's been going on in there, but it doesn't look doty and rotten. But if you come down here, you can see that this is starting to rot away. So I got to keep that in mind when I use this area as my trigger or my release point, is that it's doty. I can't put too much trust in it.
The hinge is the gap in between your face cut and your back cut. And it's important that your hinge has some strength to it. Yeah. So that's where you need to know where the strength in the tree is.
And there is definitely a difference between too much hinge and not enough.
One of the most dangerous tree felling videos I've done was when I left too much hinge. And a lot of people seem to have a hard time grasping why that was a problem, but the tree barber chaired on me because of it. So then the other thing I'm looking at is up in the tree, how many dead limbs do we have? And the more dead limbs we have, the more likely it is to be hollow. And then especially if you have kind of a hole in the tree that you can tell rain is coming down, then you know it's got more chance to be hollow. Do you ever do a plunge cut into the tree to see if it's hollow?
Most of the time, if I put a chainsaw in a tree, I'm gonna cut it down. And because it's too dangerous Like, I hate when people girdle trees. That's where you make the ring around it to kill it. Just cut it down because you're creating a future hazard.
Yeah, I'm pretty much, when I'm committed to cutting a tree down, sometimes if my hinge is going to go this way, I'll bore cut above it this way. But if you're saving the log, you'd be just damaging
That's
what
right.
you're trying to get out of it.
But you can also, a lot of guys will bore out the center of their hinge, especially on a bigger tree where there's a chance you might not reach the middle, so you don't leave anything hanging. My hope is that you'll get some lumber out of this. And so we're going to cut it like we would cut a sellable tree. And there's a few different steps to where you're cutting a tree for lumber, where you're cutting a tree for safety. And hopefully we can go over those as we go along.
I guess if you go ahead and clear this and make your first cut, you can show us how you're deciding on making the face cut.
Yeah, I'll weed eat around here and then we'll make our face cut.
So if he wasn't here, I'd bring the brush cutter down here and mow around this. But when he's cutting down trees for a living, he doesn't have a mower that he has follow him around to do that.
No mowers. This cold start's gonna take 7 pulls.
So if anybody is curious about the saw that Matt's using, this is a steel 661 with a 28-inch bar.
Now we're gonna make our face cut.
You know where you want it to land, and obviously you're putting your face cut at 90 degrees to that. So tell me how you line that up. Tell me how you decide how deep to go.
Okay, so on a chainsaw, they'll all have this line. That's a sight line. So you can use that to kind of aim where you're gonna go with it. Point it out that way, right down the sight.
Yep.
And then I try to go straight down, and then I don't try to go in too far, because that's where your strongest wood's gonna be, is on the outside. If it's hollow or doty, the only place there's gonna be any material is on the outside.
So a lot of people are adamant that you need 30% face cut, and that might be fine for a homeowner, but if you want the log, cutting 30% back at that steep angle, you're gonna waste a lot of log.
Well, when you're in hardwoods, the closer you get to the heart, the more likely you are to create a barber chair, because it's straight grain. So as the tree tries to break over, the back will try to open up and the front's not going, and that's where you get in a lot of trouble.
Every video that's ever been made about tree felling or chainsaws has gotten a comment that the chain isn't sharp. And people are saying that dust is coming off instead of chips, but that's because of the distance you are and just the way it looks on camera. It's not the case. He's got a sharp chain.
That's our face cut. I'm gonna clean that up a little bit.
Now I've got to say, I've never seen a face cut that looked like that. I'm so used to it angling back into the tree further, but that's just wasting some of the tree.
It is. And so you're a sawmill guy, you understand that just past this is lumber.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you go any deeper, you're just getting rid of lumber, and you're not really saving anything. It's not making a tree fall over. You're fighting the top, not the bottom.
I wonder if this guy has any squatter's rights. If he filed the right paperwork, if he could slow this tree felling up for 30 days.
You better get on the phone with somebody.
I wonder what kind of spider that is.
Looks like a wolf spider. And this
you're deep enough into this right now that you're going to have strong holding wood here?
Yeah. It might not be as strong here, but we're still going to have a good enough face right here. And this will still hold. But, once you get past the bark, you're into the wood.
All right.
And this is bypass. A lot of people don't like to do that. They don't teach that, but I sell logs for lumber, and the bypass helps the hinge pull away from the stump instead of pulling away from the log.
Yeah, so a lot of times I've heard it called a Dutchman when one cut goes past the other one, and I try to make my corners meet perfectly.
Yeah.
And so you would probably be more worried if it went past in this direction, but not so much going this way?
Yeah. And sometimes, like if I'm cutting a high quality tree that's going to bring real good price, I will just cut down on these corners. That way it'll help it break off, because anywhere that the bark's at and you don't have it squared up, it's got a tendency to rip. So sometimes I'll make a little slice on the corners. Just it's all kind of a feel game. The more you do it, the more tricks you learn. And
something I've always said, and Matt said the same thing today, is that the tree will tell you what cutting technique to use. In my mind, a tree that has a lot of lean or is already trying to go hard one way, your job is not to make it fall. Your job is to keep it from falling until you're ready.
Yeah, and to keep it from damaging itself.
So every time we cut into this, we are damaging the integrity of the tree, and at some point it's going to fall. What we want is to control the exact moment it falls. So that's the reason that you want a hinge and a trigger on most of your cuts.
That's right.
Unless the tree has no lean at all and you're going to have to wedge it, then you don't need that trigger.
Like if this tree had no lean at all, we would just come in. We might do one side and come around, but we would wedge it. As we got closer to our hinge, we'd just keep driving wedges until it went over.
So on this tree, are you going to bore from that side and bore from this side?
I'm going to bore from that side. Most of our dead limbs are on that side, so that's the side I don't want to be on. I want to get that side done and out of the way. And when I finish, I want to be headed out that way because there's less stuff to fall on me. Probably square up these root flares on the side, make it a little easier to line my cuts up.
Yeah, that's something I've learned from watching Matt. And I think Matt does it primarily so that when he's done, he has a log that's more manageable and more straight and more usable for the mill. But what I learned is if you've got big root flares that make this tree not be round, I have an easy time understanding how to cut a round tree, that this is how my cuts need to look. On a tree that's star-shaped, I have a harder time figuring out where I want my holding wood. But you can come straight down right here and just remove this root flare. And now I can picture in my mind better what's the hold.
We'll be able to see it. I'll stop occasionally and we can look at where I've cut. Bigger trees, they'll be obviously harder to line up your cuts where you won't be able to see where you poke out one side or the other. So we'll do our best to just use the bottom of our face cut as our eyeball line to where we bore in.
I got one more controversial question to ask you here. A lot of people argue about this in my comments. Should your back cut, whether that's a bore cut or straight from the back, should your back cut be level with your bottom of your face cut, higher or lower?
Generally, I make mine level. You don't really want to be lower because then you create a pry bar when it does go. It creates a pry bar on the face and that can help split it out. And when I say split it out, it'll just slab a piece off.
What I normally do is I have mine an inch higher.
Yeah.
And the idea is that if it falls and hits, then it could slide back across. And that's the only opinion I have on it. But I think only one time have I had that where it would have actually happened.
Yeah. Some guys, they swear to it when you're pushing or pulling a tree that you go below it so that way it doesn't slide off the stump. working with.
Yep.
It's I think it'll be solid.
Yeah, I think I'm excited to have this tree. If this was a healthy tree, I'd leave it because it's so big and old. But with all the up top, all the branches haven't had leaves on them in 2 years.
Yeah.
Right now is the time to get lumber out of this, or you never will.
You never get nothing out of it. You don't do it now.
Yep.
You get to pick up sticks. That's about it.
So now you're going to try to establish a hinge.
Yeah, I'm gonna bore out everything on that side, and then once I get that side bored out, I'll bore out everything on this side. Feels pretty doty in there. So it could be rotten. My guess is once we get it down, you'll be able to butt some off and you'll still have plenty of lumber.
So when you notice that, does it change with this tree? Does that change anything when you say, I think it's soft in the middle?
Yeah, it'll change. Like, I won't go as far back. You know, my hinge is going to be what my hinge is going to be.
So in general, the hinge is what controls the fall. It's a strip that is about 10% of the width of the diameter of the tree that runs across a strong part of the wood.
Now we'll bore out the other side, try to match up our cuts.
Feel free to correct me on this, but this is something that I learned from Buck and Billy Ray. I don't know if you watch him. This tree still has a ton of strength in it. We know there's so much you haven't removed. It's not going anywhere.
No.
So if you're new to cutting down trees, at this point your heart's running and you're excited and you're trying to rush through that.
Yeah.
Is don't get in any hurry.
Don't get in any hurry. The thing I see a lot of amateur videos is a lot of hollering and running around. Just stay calm, stay on task. If things don't work out, calm. Because once you start freaking out, you'll do things that you'll regret.
Yep. And as long as we've left a bunch of holding wood back here and we have a wide hinge, it's not going anywhere right now. We can take our time. Now, once you get down to all that's left is cutting that hinge, then you need to, be ready to get out of the danger zone.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, I think
if the tree was completely hollow, all that would be holding is the outside anyway. So it's really no different.
I think I'm going to set this camera up to have it land near the camera. Right now, I'm trying to set up a camera so that tree almost lands on the camera. Yeah. And we're in line with it. But the reason this is relevant is this could be your house. This could be a power line. This could be anything. We need to understand where the top of that tree is going to land. So show us how you do that.
So I've got this stick here and I'll hold it at the corner of my eye and I'll have my arm outstretched and I will grab it just like that. And I will do that and I'll have a 90-degree angle and I'll hold it at the bottom of the tree, pointed, and I'll walk backwards until I get to the very top of the tree. And so right there is a very top limb. Somewhere in this area. All right, we've got her bored out.
Okay, so let's take a look at the hinge. We are now out here. It looks like we've got almost nothing, But when you get out to the middle, that's going to be, that hinge is just about perfect. You done this before?
Maybe once or twice.
Yeah, the rule of thumb, and it can vary by trees, is you want it to be about 10% of the diameter of the tree. 3 foot tree, 3.5 inch hinge, maybe a little bit less than that. Now, I've seen a lot of times, and I've done it myself, where now you've got that hinge and you punch out the center of it.
Yeah.
Now, how do you decide if you need to do that? Do you need to do it here?
I don't need to do it here. You could do it, like if I wasn't able to reach the middle of the tree, if the tree was slightly bigger, I would bore in the center, and we call it windshield wiper, you know, that way you don't lose most of your hinge. Some guys bore it out to keep their hinge from splitting up the tree.
Yep. And so that's called a barber chair. We already talked about. If you have too much strength, if the overhead force of the tree forces the tree to fall before your hinge is thin enough, that's a barber chair and it'll split out. And so sometimes if this had an extreme lean, you could remove the center of the hinge so that it cannot split if it's not solid.
And we've got a big wide trigger back here. What I'm gonna do is where we discovered that was rotten on that side, I'm gonna start on this side. This is a pro move. I wouldn't suggest doing it like this, but I like to use the top of my bar and just run across. And like I said, when it pops, I'll be going that way. But with a more up and down release, I'm already standing up instead of trying to cut it off flush.
Yeah, so a lot of people leave this trigger here and they come in from the back. Now I cut up here and I waste a foot of log so that I'm in a more comfortable cutting position. But when you're doing this for a living, you can't afford to do that. And that's where he's coming in at this angle. I've seen other people come straight down with
Sometimes
the cut.
I do straight down. Where we left a lot of meat because this tree's kind of rotten down here, I go at more of an angle. We already know that we're gonna have to butt it off. But back to your point about where you cut to, I also feel more comfortable with my saw down closer to the ground. I feel like it's harder to cut a tree like this than it is like this, where you can use your knees.
Interesting.
And if you have to wedge it, push it, or pull it, you have more. The lower you go, the more leverage you'll have. Another thing is you can watch this and you can tell what the tree's doing. If it's trying to sit down on you, or if it's trying to open up too fast, you can read that.
Yep.
That's what I like to do. I've obviously missed something somewhere. And so like I said before, don't panic, but you gotta be ready because it'll go.
Yeah. Woo, doggy. That's a lot of tree.
Yeah,
Hey, you couldn't have told that story any better if you tried.
yeah.
So it had one little piece somewhere, like right in here maybe, that was holding.
Right here, you can see that.
That ripped right there. That was all that was holding it. So when we were talking earlier, you had cut one side, but this entire side was still holding. People give me a lot of comments about how I'm walking around talking with the tree half cut. Well, all it took to hold this was the hinge and one little piece there.
And all the weight was on that side. You could tell by how it never got close to the ground. And you could see the thickness of our hinge went a little thicker than I normally would because we knew it was doty when I bored in, because you can see the dote.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the dote.
Yeah, I've never done a hinge that big, but I mean, that's a huge tree. Down where you're cutting it again, that's over 4 foot.
Now, if it had been solid, if I wouldn't have felt, because this is right where I bored in at, and I felt this hole. So if I felt solid, I would have made that a lot thinner.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that it wouldn't be strong enough to hold.
I wonder if your stick was accurate.
I don't know. And I hope so. Make me look bad.
I tell you what, it doesn't get much better than hearing that crack and seeing the tree fall. Feel like a He-Man, like a caveman.
By the power of Grayskull!
We conquered the tree.
Oh, we is short. Where's my stick at?
Should be right around here. Well, we don't know how far that tree came out here.
There's no way I was wrong.
Yeah. So this tree might have been 5 foot shorter. I think it broke into 1,000 pieces on the way down.
Yeah, lots of firewood. Firewood sale at Brock's.
It'll be a full video for me to climb up and get that limb down and just into pieces I can carry. Everything I do is field trees. They are as wide as they are tall.
Yeah.
Cleanup is a lot harder.
We
I tell you,
we call them 3-acre tops.
there's a lot of danger in cutting that tree down.
There is.
But I actually think there's more danger in what's left.
There's
than
a
in
lot
cutting.
of the whole thing. It sounds like hyperbole, but when it comes to cutting trees, anything, I don't care if it's firewood, cutting trees on your own property, clearing, logging, everything out here wants to kill you.
Absolutely. So I'll do another video on my version of how to safely deal with this, because this main log weighs, I don't know, 10,000 pounds, this trunk, at least, probably more than that. And it's supported by these branches that have halfway broken. So there's a lot of weight just hanging up there. That's not going to be easy to deal with.
I want to see how far that rock goes up in there. So this is kind of what we do when we're logging too. If we cut a tree like this, we'll go ahead and drag it out. And then when you got a hole like this, we'll have our log rule, our measuring rule. And you stick it up in there. And it went about that far. And then we'll cut it off.
Mm-hmm.
And that it'll start soliding up right in there. So you probably get 3/8 or 2/10 or something out of it.
Okay, so the next tree we've got here is one that would scare me. That tree over there is twice as big, but I would have cut that.
Yeah.
But this one, I've been thinking I'd like it down, but here's what gets me. All of this is dead and rotten. And then there's another hole up here where you can see that rainwater's coming in. So this whole thing is probably rotten. So when we were talking earlier about my job is not to make it fall, my job is to keep it from falling till I'm ready. I'm looking at this and going, where's enough strength to keep this from falling? And, you know, is the center of this holding anything?
My guess is probably not. And that's just like on that tree, the shallow open face, that's where all of our material is that we're going to work with. And it's got a kickback limb right here. And that does exactly what it sounds like. It kicks back. So I'm really going to kind of aim it right where you're at.
So if you had it fall this way, it could possibly hit and then the whole thing come back towards you. I think I've seen that in your videos where they come back at you.
Yeah, I've had them chase me. They don't like me for some reason.
Because of the size of that, unless you have the option to take it off now, which has got its own set of problems.
Yeah.
You're going to try not to have it land on that.
You can weaken it up. You can just make a cut in it and weaken it up, and it'll help fold it up. But for what we're going to do, we're just going to try to lay it down right here.
Okay. So tell me, before you start cutting, where is your hinge going to be in this? And then what are you going to leave as a holding wood and trigger?
So with the top really wants out here. So I'm going to kind of aim for that oak tree right there. And I'm going to make my shallow open face right here and my hinge right here, just in this piece alone. And then I will start on that side, and I'll probably just come around. I'll make my hinge, and then I'll probably just come around until it goes.
Matt's cut 100 times as many trees as I have, thousands and thousands of trees. But to me, what I see when I look at this is that this is just like one little piece of it. And I would be worried that but I mean, it's all tied together. I would just be worried that wouldn't be enough strength to hold it. But your hinge can go through here, and then you'll leave a trigger with this, or?
Actually, I'll probably just come around it. So I'll make my face cut and my hinge, and then I'll cut that off and just come around here because there's nothing holding over here. So once we get so far, it's gonna go.
All right. Well, I'll just get out of the way and watch you work.
Now where you're watching, you know that if anything happens, you need to go that way, and I'll pass you.
She opening a little?
Yeah, the wind's playing with it right now. See, it's trying to sit down over there. I was hoping.
Man, I did not think this tree would be hard to get down.
Ain't that crazy? I'll be able to see all the way.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. I'm shocked that that hasn't just... I thought that thing was going to go early because you got a lot more weight over there, and it's fairly straight, but it's not completely straight.
Yeah.
There is the distance between your hinge and your wedges is not helping you.
No.
If that hinge was back here, like most people do it, you'd be wasting a foot of the tree, but then you'd have more leverage to push it over. So if that had been completely rotten, but it had a lot of lean, it would have been a totally different tree. Oh, it's moving now. There she goes.
That little bitty hinge held it the whole time. I think I did miss a little piece right there, didn't I?
Yeah. So that little nub right there was holding the tree up, I think.
Yep. Somehow I missed it.
That took, you had to swing that hammer about 20 times because of that little bitty nib.
Yep.
So this tree, this is what you can't predict. I thought that rot would go deeper, but all of this was still holding it.
Yeah.
Now I want to talk about some of the comments we get telling us things that you should do. One of them that I get all the time is that you should always make a downward sloping back cut. They say the way, like the only way to cut a tree is 30% face cut, leave your 10% hinge, and then angle your back cut down in.
No. Never do that.
And I'll let you tell them your reason, but I didn't understand it. I've seen detailed explanations of the geometry and the physics of what actually happens there. And what it's actually trying to do, especially if that sits back on you a little bit, it's trying to push the weight, push the bottom down through your face cut. That angle back cut actually creates a ramp that could break your hinge and have the tree fall
right off, and then the tree falls over backwards. It slides right off the stump, hits the ground, and then falls over on you. It's no good.
Have you ever seen that in real life?
I've seen it. I've done it myself, so I know for a fact that's what happens.
I've only seen it in videos, but it was so obvious.
Yeah.
And I've got the old timers that my grandpa showed me to make an angle back cut. I'm glad that your grandpa didn't die doing that. That doesn't mean it's the right way to do it. Another one that drives me crazy is telling you, this is the way to cut down a tree. When you walk up to a tree, your job is to find out the right cut for that tree.
Yep. Every tree is different. Every species is different.
So if you've been cutting trees your whole life, I'm glad to hear your comments in the comment section. If you've never really cut down a tree and you're just learning, or you've only done a few, man, start on the small stuff and work your way up. Don't go tackle a rotten leaning tree, but those are what makes it dangerous. It's what makes it unpredictable. When you have a lot of lean, that's more dangerous than a straight standing tree.
Yeah, a leaning tree is dangerous, dangerous, dangerous.
Because it's trying to fall before you're ready for it to fall. And your job is to control the fall.
And if you touch it with a saw in the wrong place, I mean, it's gonna explode.
So you got any other things that come to mind that people say in videos all the time that's wrong?
A lot of PPE stuff, I get that a lot, in which if you wanna wear PPE, that's fine, that's your choice, but it's also personal protective equipment. Just worry about yourself. If that's what you wanna wear it. I don't judge you, but I also don't believe that anything you wear makes you safe. Safety is what you do, not what you wear.
Yeah, so if you watch me, if I'm going to be running a saw for an extended period of time, I'm probably going to wear chaps, but it's a personal choice. And most of the things, like he said, that actually get you hurt are carelessness. And I think that gives you like a false sense of security.
Yeah.
Another consideration with wearing chaps out here, it's 95 degrees today.
100% humidity.
Another thing I've seen in person is my dad have a heat stroke from overworking himself in the heat. It's 95 degrees out here. Yeah. You want to put on 2 or 3 more layers and say, I'm going to cut trees all day? I mean, Matt cuts trees 8-10 hours a day.
Yeah, no way. I've had to wear chaps on jobs before, and it's miserable.
Yep. So I've done safety videos before. If you're asking, Brock, what's your advice? My advice is wear all the safety gear. But also, I'm not your mom and you're not my mom. So we just won't worry about it, what the other one's doing that much.
There is one thing that I'd want everybody to know, that most accidents when it comes to tree felling happen within 15 feet of this stump. So identify where the tree's going and get away. Every step you take, you're increasing your safety dramatically.
The only accident I've ever had in tree felling was a limb falling on my head. So,
that explains it.
Yeah, I used to make better videos before that happened. Got any other stupid comments that you get all the time that you want to react to?
I get all kinds of stuff that you got to make a big notch and back cut. And when you're in straight grain hardwoods, the best thing to do is to make a shallow open face, bore your hinge out, bore the center, leave a trigger, and let it go. And they actually, if you take a safety course in our area in the Midwest where hardwoods are prevalent, they require you to learn it.
Yep. And it's just like anything else. People say that bore cut's really dangerous. I found it to be perfectly safe. As a novice, I was able to watch the correct way to do it and how to start your bar out and then swing it into the tree once you're in. Once you learn it, it's no more dangerous than any other cut.
No.
So it's impossible to teach you how to cut down a tree in a single video. We could do a 5-minute video that teaches you the basic mechanics of it, but learning to cut down a tree is a lifelong endeavor. And if you guys want more in-depth, real-world, everyday scenarios, that's where you're going to Matt's channel, Boys in the Woods.
Yeah, boy.
He lives in the woods, cuts down trees for real. So
that's right.
Check him out over there. I appreciate you taking time to watch the video. I'll put links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.
Bye.